anyway, you know.
Yeah. So yeah, easy questions. That's cool. I'll go into just basically quickly how it kind of went in.
Yeah, well, I mean, as I say, my daughter said to me, have you ever heard of a place called Manitowoc? I said, no. She said, it's in Wisconsin. I said, well, I know that's where Green Bay is. She said, have you ever heard of somebody called Stephen Avery? No. She said, well, would police ever deliberately frame somebody for murder? And I said, no, because it's too big a risk for police to do that. She then said, well, there's this series I've watched on, you know, it's about this guy Stephen Avery, who was convicted in 1985, and he served 32 years. Well, he was sentenced to 32 years, and after 18 years, he was let out on DNA evidence. And immediately it's like warning flags, because I was actually thinking, you know, oh, he got out on some sort of technicality, you know?
Yeah.
There's no guarantee that he didn't actually do it. It's a little bit like this, what me and Dr. Silkman were talking about yesterday. You get the unindicted other person that was there, you know. So the fact that he'd been exonerated on DNA evidence, I'm not one that trusts DNA evidence that much. It's because, as Jean Couchet says during Making a Murderer, you know, how do we know that isn't planted? How do we know where that DNA came from? A lot of the time we don't. So the fact that he was exonerated, you know, it was like, well, okay, he got lucky, you know. And she said, and he was suing the police for 36 million. Oh, well, okay, good luck on that one. And then he gets arrested for murder. I said, well, okay then, you know. So she said, then the nephew confessed. I said, well, there you go. That's it. End of story. You know, what more is there to say about this? You know, that's a clear cut. You know, it's you know, this guy's clearly guilty, probably guilty first time round. You know, clearly guilty this time round. The nephew's confessed helping. You know, what more do you want? You know? And she said, hold on a sec, Dad, Mum. 2 weeks later, because we've not got Netflix at that time, you see. So she comes in, and typically with Emily, I'm busy watching the football. That she grabs the remote control, yanks it away, turns over, says, "I've installed Netflix because I'm subscribed to it," you know. And she made me sit and watch Making a Murderer. And the rest sort of just, you know. So anyway, Kelly, hi there, how you doing? And I do apologize for confusing everybody by getting the by putting the start time as my 11:45 p.m. when of course it should have been 11:45 a.m. I have since corrected it, but let me just make sure that everything is as it should be. I think it is. I think we're okay. Yeah. And let me just check on here. So first of all, Kelly, whereabouts are you from?
Well, I'm from a little town. Well, it's not little anymore. It's a city called Mandurah. It's just south of Perth in Western Australia. So I've been here for probably 20 odd years now. But I originally from Sydney, Sydney.
Right. Yeah.
So I'm from Sydney, but I came over here when I was young, and it kind of stuck. So that's where I've been ever since.
Yeah, I was saying small world. I've a friend of mine originally from Bonnyrigg, just 20 miles up the road, is also in Perth, Australia, and he's also called Paul. So you're bound to bump into him at some point, you know.
I'll just look out for him.
So, when did you first watch? Or sorry, that's very presumptive. The question should be, what first introduced you to Manitowoc, Stephen Avery, and Brendan Dassey, and Teresa Holbach?
Well, actually, it's a little bit of a funny way I got to it, because I had a friend come to me, and this was years ago, and she said to me, listen, you need to get Netflix. And I was all about Foxtel then, and over here at that stage, Netflix was very, it wasn't very popular. It was still new to Australia, and it would take like, I'd watch my friend put it on, and you'd spend 20 minutes just waiting for it to buffer. So I wasn't really interested. And she said, no, you really got to get this Netflix. There's a thing called Making a Murderer. You would love it. It's true crime. It's amazing. And I'm like, yeah. And I was into West Memphis 3. I was following that case. And she's just like, no, Kelly, please. There's so many parallels in with the cases. You have to watch it. So long story short, after a while, I was watching Foxtel one day, and the episode of Dr. Phil came on. And it was him interviewing, I think, Fassbender in this one. And I was watching it. First impression was, oh, my God, the guys are guilty. Like, the nephew confessed. Like, what the hell is this rubbish? And then I didn't connect the dots that it was Making a Murderer until I finally got Netflix. I put it on. I came across, and it came straight up, suggestions, and it was Making a Murderer. And I thought, oh, hell, I'll watch it. I watched the first few episodes, and I have to admit I was a little bit like, this is boring. And then before I knew it, I was on the last episode 10. I binge watched the whole thing, and I'm just like mind blown, going, holy shit, is that even real? Is this real? I literally grabbed my phone, started Googling, seeing where if the case was still active, what was going on. And of course I went into YouTube, and Eric Cozy, bang, first person I went through. So he was the very first person I followed. I was watching all his videos, and then the rest was history. I was communicating with people, and then I went into Rubber Duckies, and then I ended up with Foul Play, Millbilly, and then I'm here now.
Yes, and you've just recently started doing videos, and you're explaining me a little bit about that. So if you could just expand on how you got into the basically creating your channel and then creating your videos.
Yeah, so Millbilly's going to laugh with this one, but I always get passionate. Like, I'll sit there and I'll have all these thoughts come to my head all the time, and we'll be sitting there and I'll go to him, I've got an idea, and he'll go to me, oh God, quick, write it down. And I'm like, and I'm like, no, let's just do it. And he's like, no, write it down. And I was like, oh. So one day I was literally sitting there, and I had all my thoughts keep coming in, and I just grabbed my laptop. I don't even have Microsoft Word on it. I had a notepad, and I just started writing. And I just started writing and writing and writing. And before I knew it, I had created this diary, and I wasn't even going to release it. It was purely for me. I wanted to do it so I could capture my thoughts. So as the case progresses, when it picks back up, I can look back on what I was thinking. And of course, I had been reading like psychology literature. I had been given special profile books from Investigator T. He had given me some things to work with, and he said, this is basic 101 in profiling and criminology. Really study that. And then from there, I just started to, really try to bring this alive. And then I read it to a few supporters, and I said, what do you guys think? And one of the supporters, Jamie, number plate, he said, holy shit, that is brilliant. That is, you need to do something with that. That was amazing. And I took the chance, and I just thought I'll give it a go, and I made it public. And now I'm getting a lot of people saying more, which is fabulous. It's really awesome.
Yeah. Absolutely. No, funny enough, I'm exactly the same. I'll be driving along, an idea comes to my mind, and I will actually send myself a voice message on Messenger. I did that last night. Something popped into my head, and I thought, if I sleep on that, I'm going to wake up the next morning thinking, what was it that came into my head the other day? So just pop it down, any way possible at the time. I want to take you back though to the West Memphis 3. I watched a documentary just recently, and it was where somebody had actually sort of gone back and reinvestigated the case, and it does seem as if one of the what was the big tall parent who was actually the stepfather?
Mark Byers.
Yeah, he seemed very dodgy, but in actual fact,
Yeah.
the documentary was saying that one of the other fathers is the most likely culprit.
Yeah, I don't know whether we should say it. I'm not sure if you wanted me to, but it starts with T. Yeah, this other stepfather. They actually, funny enough, the parallels of this is actually very interesting. He went on a civil case trying to sue the Dixie Chicks for
Yeah,
portraying this potential suspect, and it turned out that, like Colburn's doing now in this case,
yeah,
it came that they had found his DNA in the tie lace
that's
of the
right.
top, and it was his DNA that was bound into the shoelace that had bound one of the boys' hands when they found it.
Yes,
So
yeah,
he lost the case and ended up having to drop it because he went into panic mode
yeah,
because they were like, "This is really damning for you, like, mate, you now have just poured concrete on yourself."
yeah, yeah. I remember they went to, for example, an expert on the sort of creatures that live in these rivers and streams and stuff, and they concluded that this horrible mutilation of the bodies, it actually none of it's true. It was just the fact that the boys were there, and the snappy turtles. Is there even an alligator turtle in some parts? That would have eaten parts of the body. So although they see the bodies as being this horrendous crime inflicted on them, unfortunately they had simply been drowned, hadn't they?
Yeah, they found that the three boys had been drowned,
Yeah,
and again, you're right, they made out that it was bite marks. They
yeah,
said that one of the child had bite marks, and they tried to do this big analysis of that, and it, like you said, it turned out that it could have been just snapping turtles while the
yeah,
boys were there. So
yeah.
again, that where's that balance of finding experts that can dispute that.
Well, yes, yeah. So anyway, yes, the West Memphis Three is a case that's pretty iconic, particularly as I'm going to bring it back to my friend who lives in Bonnyrigg. Right next to Bonnyrigg is Dalkeith, the Newton Grange area, and the Mayfield East Houses area, which is where Luke Mitchell was accused of having murdered his girlfriend, Jodie Jones, and he's still locked up. But there's a growing number of people that are of the opinion that, well, A, Luke didn't get a fair trial, and B, that he's probably innocent. So yeah, it's a pretty bizarre case when you've got both Luke Mitchell having. I know that these aren't sort of very important in the eyes of the law, but when he's passed a couple of lie detector tests, and his mother, that's when it starts to get really interesting. When they've both, and the fact there was none of his DNA found on him at all when they tested him just later on in the evening. None of Jodie's DNA on him at all. No even like little splatters of blood or anything like that. Spatters of blood. Anyway, I don't know if you're familiar with that particular case, but it was big in Scotland in about, I'm going to say, about 2003. And of course, you got in touch with me about the Soham case.
Yes.
What was it about that you found interesting?
Well, actually, I've known about it for a while. I remember when I was like a few years back when it was around it. It actually was on Australian TV.
Right.
So we actually had it when it was kind of happening over here, and
Right.
for some reason Australia followed that case.
Sure.
And when I was at work, as you all know, I work in an emergency department, and I'm around some of the most amazing psychiatrists in Western Australia. Again, I was speaking to a particular one, and I told her about this case, and I was telling her all about it, and she turned around and she actually brought it up to me again. She said, it's one of the most first cases where you can watch someone on live TV in an interview, and you now know he's guilty, and it's a perfect case to watch when you're learning to profile or you're watching for those signs, because we know he did it. So it's great to watch it in the now time and take notes. Yeah. And I was like, yeah. And again, I think it was more the fact that, you know, it's so bizarre to hear that these two girls went missing and found deceased and stuff. And you always think always go in a pair or always go in a group and you'll be safe. So when I think what Australia was trying to bring to light is it doesn't matter if there's 2 of you, 3 of you, it doesn't matter. You have to be careful at all times and, you know your neighbours.
Oh, yes. Yeah. I mean, obviously the problem was with Ian Huntley's girlfriend being Maxine Carr, who was a school teacher and was actually the teacher of one of the girls, you know, and him being the school caretaker, you know, they wouldn't have had any issues with you know, going into his house when he was supposedly outside. I think he was saying that he was outside either washing or hoovering the car or something when they came past. Yeah, but it was just that comment from obviously when they're interviewing Maxine Carr, and it's just a 30-second interview that she does on Sky News, and she uses the past tense. You know, these girls were nice girls, and immediately it's huge red flags. And you know, I've been hamming on about Mike Holbach for ages and ages, and the people have said, "Oh, it was a slip of the tongue," and you know, he's in shock because his sister's missing. And I'm saying, well, that's an absolute load of claptrap. That's a load of bogus rubbish that you're saying, you know, because nobody from the family thinks the worst has happened. They never, you know, they sometimes don't even accept, you know, once they say they found a body, you know, even then they won't accept that it's their loved one. But also, you know, it's the you know, the grieving process could last days. I still haven't figured out what he means by that.
I know it's definitely red flags, and I did say that. I brought that up to the psychiatrist, and she kind of shot me down a few times by saying, you know, you can't judge how people react. Everyone's different. I'm like, yeah, but there's a difference between, you know, like a lot of. I'm just going to quickly bring it back, if I may.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
A lot of people bring up the Karen Holbach call, and I agree. Like, I've listened to it. My first impression was, what's up? There's someone missing. And then I re-listened to it again and I took out my feelings. And I think that's what a lot of people have to do. You have to take out your own feelings, because once you put your interpretation on it, you've made it what you think it is. Yes. So I thought, no, take it out. And I listened to it again. And then I thought, you know, by face value, when I'm just using my logic sense of what I'm thinking, what I'm hearing and how I'm hearing it, I would be more worried if she was more panicked. And I'll tell you why. Only for the fact that this woman was a 25-year-old lady. And we know that she had a social life. Yes. If it was a child and hadn't come home, you'd be frantic. You'd be like, where's my baby? Where's my child? Yes. But it's not, why would a woman, a mother who's 25-year-old may have slept over a boyfriend's house or a gentleman's house she met at a party? Yeah. So you wouldn't be going. And the way I then interpreted it was, maybe she wasn't panicked because she really didn't think that the outcome would become what it did. Yes. Yeah, absolutely. So I just, you know, and then it goes back to but there's one thing that I will say, and going back again to Ian Huntley, Ryan Hilligus and him, they share a lot of traits in the whole media side of it, that forthcoming, wanting to be the hero, wanting to be inserting themselves, and then it kind of all unraveled. So I found that really awesome to watch that unfold. Yeah, you know, for me, the because as I mentioned, my daughter first alerted me to the making of murder, and she journalism student, and so I've always had this keen interest in looking at the quality of the journalism
And I think that in Ian Huntley's case, both the interviewer and the production team, they said this isn't right. This did you notice that she referred to the girls in the past tense, and they immediately then, well the police had been watching that same interview anyway, so they'd already picked up on that, and you think, well, that's how the police should be, and particularly that's how the press should be. To date, I don't know that anybody involved in the journalism business in Manitrock ever questioned Mike Holbach and said, that's a strange thing to say, grieving process, when she's only a missing person. And so much as my annoyance is with Mike Holbach, it's equally, if not more annoyed at the journalisms, at the journalists there. What on earth are they playing at?
Could you imagine, Paul, if it was the other way around? Could you imagine if Stephen had said that? Could you imagine if Stephen had stood there in an interview and said, "Oh, she was a really nice girl when she used to come."
Confession.
They
would have treated that as being, if it had been say Barb that went missing, or it was Marie Avery, Earl's stepdaughter, and Steve had said that, they would have immediately said, you've just confessed.
Yeah, absolutely.
And yet nothing at all. I don't know of any journalist that's ever questioned Mike Holbach about what he said. But anyway, so when you first watched Making a Murderer, as you say, it took you a while to get into it, as it did for me. I think it was the fact that you're trying to put the whole story together, and it's difficult at times, isn't it? We're fortunate in that we've got 20 hours now worth of Making a Murderer that we can go to at any time. And I don't know about you, but I'm always finding out new things, that I didn't necessarily notice. But you were saying that at a certain point in the documentary, you started to sort of find it quite interesting. Obviously, watched it all the way through. Once you'd done that, what were your thoughts then? Once you'd watched it all the way through, what sort of stuck out?
When I first watched it, I'll be honest with you, my first thought when I finally finished it, I thought, oh my God, the cops did this. The cops framed this man to the point that they killed this woman to get him back. That was my initial thought. It was just so in my face, and I was focusing on everything to do with the planting. I actually started watching. I then started by that time getting into Midwilly, and I was introduced to him, so I had watched some of his videos, and I was following down the road. There's 2 Ravs. I'm like, oh my God, there's 2 Ravs. The cops killed her. The cops planted everything. Oh my God. And straight away, I'm going to not lie, I cried my eyes out for Brendan. And I think everyone knows that, only because my daughter was born with a speech impediment, and I just thought to myself, oh my God, that could have been my baby. Yeah. She would have had that same, she wasn't intellectually, a bit behind like Brendan, but she didn't have the capacity to understand language. And so she could have been the one that would have just sat there and went, I don't know, yes, just to end it. And, after she's now watched it, and I'll never forget it. She finished it. She had a tear run down her face, and it was one of the most heartbreakingest moments as a mum to hear this. And she turned to me and she said, oh my God, Mum. And I went, what? She goes, that could have been me. And I went, yeah it could have. Yep. So, I honestly, my first initial thought, though, was cops killed her, 2 Ravs, everything was planted. This is just insane. And I couldn't believe that it was allowed to get away with. Like, I'm like, how is this even possible? How can people not see this? So it was, I couldn't get my head around how corrupt and how dirty the whole thing was. So, yeah.
And the, I don't know about you, but exactly the same thoughts. No idea how Teresa died, where she died. It, you know, for me, it was clear that the police, the sheriff's department have got a huge involvement in this. Whether they actually pulled the trigger or whether they got somebody else to do it for them, it's pretty clear that, that there is a connection, although Giltis would like to distance the civil suit from the arrest of Steve, the disappearance of Teresa. The timing is too convenient. But
yeah,
what's interesting is that from the fact that I'm thinking, Teresa could have been murdered anywhere. There were people suggesting maybe she got home, maybe Ryan arrived, they got into an argument, and he walloped her with, say, that she was opening the back of the car. There's the lug wrench, and he just decides to attack her. Unfortunately, though, then the crime scene seems to have narrowed in on Cuss Road, which is right next to the Avery salvage yard. Did you find that to be a bit of a bit of a shock, if you like? That now we realise something really did happen at the end of Cuss Road.
Yeah, so Cuss Road does confuse me, because I always think, like, I believe something happened at Cuss Road, but I don't exactly know what. You kind of got to go, did they find stuff there? Did they not find stuff there? If they found stuff there, why didn't they use that stuff to plant better? So I get really torn between the logics of what they could have done there. But then I think they used it. It was like the only part of the entire case that seemed like was treated like a crime scene. So something happened. I don't know what. I just don't, and I can't get. And the thing is, I don't think we'll ever know, because even if they did find something there, I'm at that point now. I'm wondering whether they were cleaning the scenes up as they were going along, so they were directing it, or so it wasn't anything to be found. So I really, Cuss Road is a big question mark. To me, it could be as significant as the entire case, or it could be as significant as they look like they did their job and try to find something elsewhere. I don't know.
Yeah, absolutely. It's, as I say, one of the big problems we find is that, and you were alluding to it earlier, is the fact that, we do see things. We're humans. We all see things in a slightly different way, with slightly different coloured glasses, and it's very, very easy to end up thinking, that makes sense. That this is what happened. That's what happened. There's been a lot of clamour for the idea that that Bobby Dassey is clearly the one that murdered Teresa. And I think we have to be careful, don't we? Because otherwise we might end up convicting the wrong person a second time.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. And I honestly, you said it probably better than I could have. And I do agree with that. I think Bobby does play a huge role in this.
Yes.
But I think people underestimate what Zellner's trying to do with Bobby.
Yes.
I don't think she's necessarily trying to scream black and blue, he's the murderer. I think she's doing it very cleverly. She is just destroying the state star witness. And if she can do that and bring that down, so if they do retrial it, not only do they now lost the key, the bullet, the bones, possibly the Raz, they also have she's now turned their state star witness into a Denny suspect.
Yeah.
That is brilliant. That is brilliant.
Yeah.
So I agree. You have to be very careful who you point to, because like I said in my last thought diary, what if we're wrong? What if we're wrong?
Yep. I mean, it's one of these things whereby I must apologise to Fleetside, because I haven't been in contact with him much for a while, but he was always pointing out, it's if you actually want to look at it from a sort of a rational, sensible point of view, the Teresa's still alive and out there somewhere theory explains a heck of a lot of things. And for me personally, I would love that to be the case. I would love it to be that the bones that they identified as being Teresa's were actually Carmen Boutwell's, because she died on that Wednesday supposedly of a drug overdose. Although people are saying, how do you end up dying of a what was it she was on? Was it some sort of morphine type drug? But it was a substitute type drug that she was on. How do you end up dying of that? They've got these so many loci that say that it's definitely somebody related to the Holbachs. Well, apparently Carmen Boutwell is a cousin of the Holbach family. I would love that to be the case. Whether it's going to end up that it is the case that Teresa's still alive and out there somewhere, it's difficult, and that's not really Zellner's job to argue that point of view, is it?
It's not. It really isn't. Her job isn't even to prove that someone's guilty. It's to prove that her client isn't. Yeah,
absolutely. Yes, she would love to be able to show exactly who it was that did it, but and other people ask us, methadone, thanks, Milbilly. A lot of people say to us, she's jumping from this theory to the next, to the next, to the next. It's not up to her to come up with a theory. It's up to the state, once Steve has been proven innocent, to then do a proper investigation and tell us what actually happened. You've been caught out now, and not just leave it obviously up to Manitowoc and Calumet County Sheriff's Department to do it, because that would be the biggest fudge up of all time. Here in the UK, if there, for example, we had the very infamous Hillsborough disaster. I don't know if you heard about that.
No.
Okay, so it was many years ago in a football match when Liverpool were playing Nottingham Forest at the Sheffield Wednesday in Sheffield. So from Nottingham and Liverpool, Sheffield, it's sort of not quite equidistant, but it's not far off. So they turned up at Hillsborough, and there was the way that the police were sort of carrying out the sort of segregating and putting the supporters into various sort of holding areas of the ground that were sort of fenced off, to try and put the right number of people in. There was such a crush of people arriving late. They then opened this big gate. It caused this huge crush of people, with the result that over 90 Liverpool supporters were killed by being crushed because they were at the front at this fence. They had nowhere to go, because in those days, there was a lot of fencing at certainly at the English football matches, and all the headlines at the time were that the Liverpool fans had brought this upon themselves. It was their fault. They were drunk. They was this, that, and the other, and the police had nothing at all to do with it. In the end, they had a separate police force come in and look at the whole situation, which is something they do quite often. And lo and behold, now West Yorkshire Police have officially apologised for the fact that it was their mistakes that led to the demise of these 90 supporters. So you would hope that I suppose it will probably stay within Wisconsin, that they'll do some sort of investigation into it, but you'd really like it to be some other police force, from somewhere other than Wisconsin. But if it has to be in Wisconsin, it has to be from the top down, a proper investigation. Sorry, I've kind of sort of taken over the talking there. I didn't really mean to, but I'm just wondering what your thoughts are on the sort of what should happen when Kathleen does eventually get Stephen out, and once Brendan are out.
Well, I think someone made a comment before, and I totally agree with it. For starters, the boys need to move away. They just need to get out of Manitowoc. They need to start fresh. But the scary thing is, even if they get out, I'm scared still for their safety, because there's going to be people out there, no matter whether she gets them out on, for whatever reason, whether she goes back to trial and raises reasonable doubt or whatever reason.
Yeah.
There's going to be still people out there that think he's guilty, just like there's still people out there that think he still raped Penny in 1985.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
So I think that when they get out, they should just move away, start fresh. I'm at that point that I wonder whether Stephen would even want to go ahead with another civil lawsuit. I think Kathleen would encourage it, and I think it'd be her duty to follow that through. But I think, honestly, Stephen would be absolutely petrified that it would be the cycle of a new chapter of another frame/planting scenario on him all over again, another bounty on his head.
Yeah, I agree with most of what you say there. I think it's Steve's duty. It's his obligation and Kathleen's to go forward with as expensive a civil suit as they possibly can, and hold up all of the people that have been involved in this corruption. Your Fallons, your Garns, your Kratzes, your Sukoviches, your Wiegerts, your Fassbenders, your Lenks, your Corbins. Hold them all up and say, this is not acceptable. You have cost the state of Wisconsin, you have cost taxpayers, over $100 million. This is not acceptable. This cannot carry on. It really does have to be, the what's the term? You have to dredge the swamp, as it were.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, I do agree. I think that's what has to happen. You can just understand that fear that would come with it for him, and like I was watching it the other day again, and I watched Peterson say again, they should have just killed him. It would have been easier just to kill him. And you think, oh my God, shit, is that their last move? If they're playing checkers, is that it? Is that checkmate? They've got nowhere else to go. Let's just get this done. And I fear for him. I fear for both of them. So I just, what's about to happen, I think it's going to be interesting in the next few months. And I'm excited to see the case moving again. That's for sure.
When you hear Kenneth Peterson say that, and he said that whilst he was still the sheriff of Manitowoc, on was it TV or radio, it confirms my belief that such conversations actually took place.
I do believe that, and I'm so glad you brought that up, because honestly, that's something that I touched base with. No matter whether they framed him as in this was all a planned objective and they started this with Teresa and ended it with Teresa to get Stephen, whether there was just planting involved, no matter what happened, there would have had to have been a talk. The main players would have had to come together and gone, right, this is what's going to happen. I find it hard to believe that there was 3 or 4 people just planning stuff, not realizing that the other one was doing it. That just doesn't make sense. I agree with you. Yeah. They've had conversations. They've got together. They've gone, right, what do we do? Where are we at? Where do we go? And let's just kill him. Or why don't we just plant this? You don't know where and how the context came about, but you're right. There would have had to have been conversations.
Yeah. I think there's 2 interesting scenarios here, though, and that is the fact that 2 interesting films to look at, the various scenarios. I don't know if you're familiar with A Murder in the Park, which is one of Sean Reck's documentaries. He's the guy that's doing this, convicting a murderer. So he did A Murder in the Park. And you've also got the Time on Netflix, the Khalif Browder story.
Oh my God.
Yeah. And what's interesting is at the beginning of A Murder in the Park, we see the indignation of the police in having to tell lawyers exactly what their worth is, what their financial worth is, because this Anthony Porter, who by the way is completely guilty, but he's been exonerated through this bizarre David protest and his students and a private investigator. It's bizarre, and it's like the other end of the scale. These again, this shouldn't happen. There was things about that case that were wrong, but you see the indignation of the police being asked that, to list their sort of assets, because this guy is potentially going to take them all from them. And you think, what were Manitrot thinking at the time in 2003, 04, beginning of 05, Tom Kasura. And the other one is this Khalif Browder story. At the end, he is successful with his civil suit posthumously. So this idea that you can just kill somebody and the civil suit will just go away. Well, or you'd have loads of people killing people taking out civil suits, wouldn't you? It doesn't happen that way. Sorry.
No, you're right. I was agreeing. It just doesn't happen that way. You're so right. So, and that story, oh my God, that was just heartbreaking. You think,
it's. I mean, and just for what was it? A rucksack and an iPad. And then it was the fact that they were so hell bent on him taking a plea deal, and he would have been out with the amount of time that he'd already served.
I know.
But he was, very, very similar to Steve. I'm not going to admit to something I didn't do.
Yep. And anyway, I think that's what, going right back again to the beginning with Stephen and watching that very first, Making a Murderer series. And what I took away from it was he's innocent. And that is because of that moment. He has never budged from that. He's so adamant, I'm innocent, I'm innocent, I'm innocent. And if he would have taken a plea, if he would have confessed, it wouldn't have, he probably still would have got life, but it would have been, for me, Stephen seems like he needs to get it out and then he can feel free again. So I think he would have, if he had done this crime, he would have confessed by now, and he hasn't, and that speaks volumes to me.
Here in Scotland, we have a popular word, feisty. You're familiar with that, yeah. Final question. Yeah. What is it that makes Aussies so feisty when it comes to this case? I was blown over by the amount of people in Sydney that came to see Steve Driz and Laura Nyrider, and then Melbourne, but they also went to Adelaide, and eventually I think they went on to New Zealand. But there's so many supporters from Australia. What is it about the Australian psyche that makes them so feisty when it comes to these sort of things?
I think I don't even know how to say it. I think it's in our characters. We're just all just wired that way. We're all just to each other, we're pretty mellow, but when we get passionate, we get passionate. It's just the Aussie way. Yeah. And I think, honestly, I know this sounds, odd, but we have cases over here. Don't get me wrong. We have corrupt, probably cases. We've got, abuse of the power. We've got all that. But when you watch it on TV, and you, like I thought to myself, bloody Americans, how could you not see this? Yeah. What the hell's going on? And I think that's what gets us going, is because we're Australian. We don't even know your laws, and we can see through the bullshit. Come on. Yeah. And I think that's what gets us going. And honestly, I've got to go back to Brendan. He just touches everyone. It's just such a sad scenario that this poor kid was taken advantage of, and it could have been anyone's kid. And I think that touches a lot of us Aussies, because we do, look after our babies and like everyone. And it touches home, and it just makes us wild. And hey, Australia, everything tries to kill you in Australia.
Yeah. Yes. I remember when they did was being teased about, you better watch out for drop bears. And I
Oh
said,
my God.
dude, what are drop bears, you know? And he showed me, I said, they're not drop bears, they're koala bears. They're laid back little furry creatures, you know. They eat, is it eucalyptus leaves, you know, that's all they eat. You know, I said, you know, no, don't worry about them. And there was this outside Mark's house, there was this huge spider's web, and this huge spider, you know, about the size of my hand there, you know. And he's like, oh. You know, and I'm there taking pictures of him, you know, because I'm fascinated by that, you know. Oh dear. So the thing for me about Brendan is, and I get this from time to time from people. They say, you know, just, you know, what's it to do with you? You know, why are you getting in touch with Sheriff Herman? You know, why should he bother speaking to you? You know, you go and worry about what's going on in your own country and leave ours to, you know, to the people here. You know, you've got no right interfering in this. And I would always point to the fact that, you know, when I first, my first message back from Herman, and from Wiegert, thank you for your concern. You know, they are welcoming me commenting on what I've just seen. You know, if there was any sense of, you know, you shouldn't be saying this stuff, they would have said it. You know, they would have said, you know, you're in Scotland, leave this to us, we know what we're doing. But of course, Brendan says, you know, is it people of the world or people in the world? Help me if you can. And I would just like to say that, you know, I mean, I've met quite a few Australians now, both personally and you know, through the internet. And you know, as a huge cricket fan and sporting fan, you know, I have to say that, you know, the Aussies, they are great supporters when it comes to this kind of issue. You know, I think it's absolutely fantastic that we've got, you know, support for Stephen Brendan literally all around the, you know, if you think of all the English speaking countries, you know, we've got them everywhere, haven't we? You know.
Yeah, we do, and it really does go beyond that as well. You see people on a few of the like Facebook pages that are not even speaking English, and you have to go to see translation. They're all saying the same thing, like, this case breaks my heart, the corruption, the injustice, Brendan this and Stephen that. And you think, if all these people around the world can see through it, what is going on? What is going on? And it's just scary. It's scary that it can be like that.
Yeah. Just to finish off on a light note, talking about, you know, countries of the world that tune in. I remember the dude once shared with me a list of all the countries that had tuned into one of his, I think it was his start off when it came to the first Mammothon. He started off, first guest, I believe, was TikTok Manitrock, immediately followed by John Farrak. He showed me he sent me the analytics of that particular presentation. And there was something like viewers. No, it couldn't have been that video. It must have been some other video, because he sent me the analytics of one of the videos, and it was in over 50 countries that he'd had people viewing. But the one he couldn't understand was that there was somebody in Morocco. There was actually somebody in Morocco that had tuned in. I said, dude, I was in Marrakesh on holiday at the time.
Oh, that's gold. That's awesome.
You know, but I mean, okay, so, you know, he would have, maybe Morocco wouldn't normally be on his list of people that, you know, viewers that he would got, but 50 throughout the world. And I'm pretty sure that for that one, the you know, the start of Mammothon, I'm sure he would have had viewers, you know, from at least those 50 countries and probably more. I can't remember exactly, but anyway. Listen, I've kept you for nearly an hour. It's been great having you on, and please keep up the work. I'm pretty sure that everybody here in the chat is subscribed to your YouTube channel.
I wouldn't be surprised. They keep going up daily.
Good. But what I'll do is for those people that tune in and haven't yet subscribed, I'll pop the link to your channel in the description below. Okay, so if you haven't if you haven't done so already, please hit subscribe on Kellie's channel. Kellie, I'd like to thank you for coming and joining me. I'll let you say cheerio, and we'll let these people get on with the rest of their afternoons.
See you later. Thank you very much, Paul. It was a pleasure.
Thank you very much, Kellie, and to everybody that's joined in, thank you very much. We'll catch you all again soon. Bye for now.